please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's Log, Supplemental. Crime at the Halls of Injustice has been incredible of late. What we need to do now is capitalise on that success by testing the waters with normies and traitors to their own kin. Don't worry, they will get the same punishment here, life in an ISO cube, and a daily flogging from Boar, who then gets flogged for not flogging them hard enough. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number 180 to the ISO cubes. It would be 178, but I remembered I hadn't included Danny Masterson or Lucy Letby with respective ID inmate numbers. This was sent to me on BitChute's Discord server. Screenshot here from someone whose name I cannot even begin to hope to pronounce. So I'm going to call you Mod. Thank you to Mod for sending me a Daily Mail article, which led me down a rabbit hole where I then found other articles covering this, because we don't want just one, of course. All linked in the pinned comment if you're interested. Inmate number 180's name is Veronica Youngblood, and Veronica Youngblood is going to be with us for the rest of her natural born life, and if I get my bloody way, beyond, much like Jimmy Savile here in the ISO cube, who's been sat there as bones ever since we dug him up. What I want to do is tell you a bit about Veronica Youngblood, tell you what she did, the crime she committed, the trial, and her rather lengthy sentence. Obviously the title of the video gives away how long she's really here for, but there's an actual number, and I cannot think of anyone more deserving than somebody who betrays her own people. Which on the face of it could sound like a racially motivated thing, but no, that's not the case. No, you'll understand why as we get further and further into the story. Much like with others where we go down a darker path, I'm going to insert a trigger warning now. The story I'm going to tell you involves children. If you are at all easily distressed or this would in any way bother you, please click off. Thank you. So to begin this video, I want to now tell you all about Veronica Youngblood, aka inmate number 180. Veronica Youngblood, aka Veronica Castro, was born in Argentina and is a 37-year-old woman who was, when she was in Argentina at the age of 16, pregnant with her first child because she was used by her family as a prostitute. Veronica's upbringing was remarkably impoverished, and she claims she only became a sex worker after becoming pregnant with her first child, Sharon. It was through that same sex work that she met Ron Youngblood, who she had married in 2009. In 2012, they welcomed their first child together, Brooklyn, a daughter. The family lived a typical American nuclear family life in Virginia, but at some point before 2018, the family broke up, and Ron Youngblood divorced Veronica Youngblood. This then started a custody battle, and it didn't go so well because obviously Sharon stays with her mother as Ron has no legal right to her. In the case of Brooklyn, Ron Youngblood had as much right to her as her mother Veronica did, and as part of a rather messy divorce settlement and agreement of custody share, Ron Youngblood had intended to move to Missouri with his daughter as part of the arrangement. Veronica, though, didn't want to leave Virginia, so this gets a bit messy. 9 days before a crime was committed, Veronica purchased a handgun. Courtesy of Veronica Youngblood's sister, Mayra Kakzuba, she had said that her sister, Veronica, practiced a South American religion called Umbanda, in which she has believed followers would communicate with the dead through rituals. This being offered up a suitable explanation for something else later on, but I need to provide it now as a form of foreshadowing. Veronica didn't help herself much over the years that she was in America, though, because she didn't speak any English or American. So when it came to communication with her husband, there were issues. When it came to communication with lawyers, there were other issues. She hadn't really made a concerted effort to fully integrate with the country, but she made enough of an effort to make it look like she was. There's a word for that. It starts with L and ends with AZ. Now, this information should sufficiently cover the kind of person that Veronica is. Now we need to talk about the crime. This part is dark. As I earlier mentioned, inmate number 180 had purchased a firearm 9 days before the crime she committed. The crime she committed happened 2 days before the family had intended to move to Missouri because she didn't want to go to Missouri. On the 5th of August 2018, Veronica Youngblood fatally shot both of her children. To make this as seamless as possible, she had fed both of them sedative gummies so that they both were in bed and asleep when the crime was committed. The first she did this to was Brooklyn, with a gunshot wound to the head. Sharon was shot once in the back and again in the chest, but Sharon lived long enough to call 911 and tell first responders her mother had shot her. She passed away in hospital. Upon her immediate arrest, and in interview, Veronica Youngblood told investigators that she wanted to die. When one investigator asked her, "So your punishment should be what?" she replied, "The death penalty." Veronica Youngblood is a vindictive, vicious, malicious cowbag that took her children out of this world to get back at her ex-husband, all because she didn't want to leave the old Dominion state, and because she wanted to punish Ron Youngblood. She had planned this days before, a week in advance of the intended move. Veronica Youngblood was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of felony firearm use. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Now that is something I did not expect. I can understand saying not guilty and leaving it at that, but because that would hold no merit, as one of the victims with their last words said it was their mother that did it, insanity was the only option, realistically, for Veronica Youngblood to try and find a way to stay out of a prison. And just in case anyone who is non-American doesn't know this, Virginia was one of the first southern states to abolish capital punishment in 2021. Granted, she was arrested in 2018, but it has taken 5 years to get to a conclusion, meaning the death penalty was not an option. And I'm sure many people can quibble over whether or not it should be based on what we have learnt so far. A mother that betrayed her own children. And no, I'm not going to insert a joke about Missouri now. With you now fully in the know as to the crime committed, a heinous and vicious crime, I'm going to quickly mention what the state says for those who are found guilty of murder. In this instance, first-degree murder. According to state law for Virginia, it is 5 least, maximum 40 years. So, for 2 separate charges, you are looking at a potential of 80 years behind bars. As she's now 37, I'm okay with this. Perhaps now would be a good idea to get to the trial and the sentence of inmate number 180, aka Veronica Youngblood. The trial of Veronica Youngblood lasted 2 weeks, with Veronica Youngblood pleading insanity. Her defense hinged on her not being stable. Her claim was she heard voices, and her sister obviously lent credence to that with her belief system. This was rejected. The prosecution presented the phone call Sharon, her eldest, had made to the 911 operators. This included phrases like, "I don't want to die." Jurors had requested trauma therapy, which was provided to them because of what they'd heard Sharon say on that phone call. The Fairfax County Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Kelsey Gill described Veronica Youngblood as malicious, selfish, and a deliberate killer, and saying that the case goes well beyond merely having a mental illness. This goes well beyond depression. This goes well beyond PTSD. This goes well beyond being suicidal. The prosecution also alleged that it was actually Veronica Youngblood's plan to kill her children and then turn the gun on herself, because motivator of harming her ex-husband would be absolute if there was no one here for him to get justice for. It was also discovered during the trial that Veronica Youngblood had called her ex-husband and left a voicemail message telling him that she loathed him and admitted to the killings. That plea of insanity is the only thing she has going for her, and it doesn't look good so far. One of the officers that had arrived at the house the night of the shooting testified, saying she said, Sharon that is, her mother came into the room and said, "I'm going to take you to see God," and then shot her. The defense had tried, because of insanity failing, to paint Ron Youngblood as an abusive and controlling partner, and this was the main contributing factor as to why Veronica Youngblood was driven into major depressive disorder. A doctor described Veronica Youngblood's depressive psychosis, in which she claimed she heard voices that told her to kill her children and herself. It was put on the jury to decide whether or not she was legally insane the moment she pulled the trigger. On the 26th of March 2023, the jury returned less than 24 hours later a verdict on all charges, guilty to 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of the use of firearms to commit murder. The prosecution had managed to successfully argue the case that Veronica Youngblood killed both of her children as a way of getting back at wrong Youngblood, revenge, by taking away those that he loved the most. He had, by the way, attempted to have not only Brooklyn but Sharon also go with him, but a court had decided he had no legal right because Sharon was not his biological child. With this, we now come to the sentence. The defense had asked that the sentences be made concurrent instead of consecutive. What this means is, instead of them running one after the other, which is consecutive, they both run at the same time. Therefore, each clock runs out at the same time. Bear in mind here, the minimum sentence is 5, the maximum 40 for each charge of first-degree murder, which is what she's been found guilty of twice, which means the maximum is 80 years. Judge Randy Bellows said that there was no reason to reduce it, and that under state law he had no ability to decrease it. Quote, mothers and fathers have many responsibilities, but none is more grave than keeping their children safe. Tragically, their mother became the instrument of their death. Before her sentence, Veronica Youngblood spent half an hour talking about the difficulties she had raising her children through a Spanish interpreter, claiming that she was a good mother and was unsure of what had happened. Quote, something exploded in my mind. Veronica Youngblood, now inmate number 180, was sentenced to 78 years in prison. It is highly unlikely she will ever see the outside of a prison in her lifetime, nor should she. She will undoubtedly be placed in protective administrative segregation for a while, because when anyone else in prison finds out what she did, she's at the bottom of the ladder next to the sex offenders. When one betrays their children to a degree that Veronica betrayed hers, all for spite and to get back at somebody that once loved her, all you do is prove just how wasteful your life really was from the offset. And you can blame the mitigating factors of your upbringing if you like, but ultimately the adult makes all the decisions on their life. The choices you made defined you as a person. You are where you are now in an ISO because you took 2 unrealized potentials out of this world, 2 that would unconditionally love you throughout everything out of this world, for no reason other than to get back at wrong Youngblood, who had spoken after the trial. And just to quote wrong Youngblood here, they weren't the most important things in my life, they were my life. That was all I really cared about. When she took that from me, it's something I'll never get back. Those girls were leverage to her, leverage to get what she wanted from me. She obviously knew those girls were the most important things in my life. When the judge made the decision I could leave with Brooklyn, she saw that she had no more tools to use against me, so she decided to get rid of them. She could do the one thing that could really hurt me, and she'd been trying to do it for years, and she wasn't successful at it until she murdered my girl. I wouldn't put it past her that she would try to do something to me, but I never thought she would have done something to the girls. It is expected, according to Public Defender Dawn Berterac, that Veronica Youngblood intends to appeal the sentence. Best of luck with that.